Ya, ya, ya.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Sandy Hart, and I am the president of SARA. And on behalf of my cohorts, Ann Smith, Joan Marie, Laura Sa Ava, and all of SARA, I welcome you to the launch of the General Congress of Women on this International Day of Peace. In light of the life of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we see this initiative as a responsibility to elevate the spirit of her work and dreams for justice and peace for all. Will you join us in a moment of silence to honor her legacy? Thank you. An essential condition of SARA is to ensure that all voices are heard and all wisdom is shared. Yet with hundreds of you on the call, that's just not possible. Just know that our future calls will all be in an open meeting platform with more interaction and breakout rooms. Following the closing of our Sacred Circle with Grandmother Flor de Mayo, we will have an informal question and answer period. Grandmother Flor de Mayo will open our Sacred Circle with a prayer, and we will hear from our distinguished and treasured guests who are here with us today. But first, I want to acknowledge and introduce Joan Marie, who first, over 4 years ago, brought to SARA the vision for the year 2020, where the Mother's Day Proclamation in its 150th year would be revived as a clarion call to ignite a fierce and powerful force within all women all around the world. We said yes. Along the way, Joan also saw the vision of the fruit of life, nature's own elegant model of organizing. The convergence of the two showed that just a slight shift in how we look at the solutions to each of our own unique areas of work can be simplified, and those solutions can be accelerated. We know these times require new solutions, and our proposal is simple. It does not ask more of your time, only to rethink how we are organizing and who we are including in our conversations, coupled with the element of care and caregiving. We will get into that in our subsequent calls beginning next month on the 21st, so mark your calendars. At the end of this call, you will hear more about our initiative moving forward and how to stay inspired and engaged.
To the speakers you will be hearing from today will address: 1, the power of our interconnected nature, the innate imperative we are trusted with to disrupt systems that no longer serve us, inspire us to question old patterns and how to work within them to be the architects of the new, and the grace of collaboration, hospitality, and consideration to improve conditions for women, children, and all of humanity on our precious planet. If you have any questions during this call, please drop them in the chat box along with your name and where you're from. We will do our best to address them during the informal session in the last 30 minutes of our call. Thank you for being here. And now Grandmother will open in prayer.
Beloved Creator, beloved Mother, Father, heart of the heavens, heart of the earth, beloved beauty, on this sacred day in which you have designed here for us, women of the world, beloved Creator, you have called upon us on this sacred day of the warrior, beloved Creator. We, as the women of the world, have been chosen to be those warriors of the light, those that can go into the dream time, receive messages from the heavenly body. As we receive these messages, beloved Creator, we hold them in our hearts, that place of absolute truth, that place of relationship, that place of constant dialogue, that place of beauty, that place of love, the place of trust, beloved beauty. It is in this area of the heart that we bring and we honor all of the visions and dreams so that we as the warriors of the light, can, in return, bring it into a physical reality at this very, very moment, beloved Creator, as we are in the midst of all of this incredible change. We stand before you as women. We are now at this place, looking for the future, beloved Creator. It is in this place where we need to bring everyone together, to remind them of the old ways, the ways of our grandmothers, which we all sat on the table and we dialogued of all of those good things and all of those indifferent things, perhaps maybe that we are in the midst of at the moment. How is it that we're going to bring these things together and make it better for the future generations? We talk here of how we need to do ceremony, the time and when to do these ceremonies, to bring the prayer into the dialogue. Without the prayer, we can't do anything because the guidance is not there. So we need to bring the prayer into the table. The ceremonies of the women, in which we as women are the ones that feed the earth, beloved Creator. You have called upon us from the beginning of time, from the four directions, and reminding us that we bring ourselves when we have our menstrual and feed the earth. The earth is in turmoil right now. Humanity is in turmoil because we need to do these ceremonies to give the earth the fortification that she needs at this very, very moment as she is in turmoil right now. Beloved Creator, we bring about those four sacred elements of life. What is it that we as women do around the time of the winter? What is it that we need to prepare? What about the fall, the spring, the summer? It is around these sacred times of the year that we prepare ourselves in time for rest, in time for receiving visions and dreams, in times that we need to prepare for our medicine. We prepare our gardens, and we prepare ourselves to continue to do the ceremonies of life, bringing everyone into the circle, beloved Creator, for the future generations, for the future of the children. In the name of all of these sacred things that you have shown us, beloved Creator, I thank you. I thank the great mystery, and I thank this beautiful, beautiful day in which you have empowered us women to be the warriors of the light. I thank you, beloved Creator, in the name of the great mystery. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandmother. It is now my great honor and pleasure to introduce Karambu Rangera from Meru, Kenya. She is an innovative global, national, and local leader of love and light, who reclaims wastelands and people's sense of powerlessness and hopelessness through a new story. It is through our divine wisdom that is given to all. We join her as becoming dancers with life. So, my dear, wonderful friend and colleague, How do you identify or come up with systemic solutions to systemic problems?
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here with all of you and to share my insights, born of my life experiences, working with international peace initiatives, with women and children who society sees as vulnerable. My name is Karambu Ringera, and I'm the founder and president of International Peace Initiatives. International Peace Initiatives works with women and children, survivors of systemic conditioning as they navigate patriarchy, because I understand that that conditioning comes from patriarchy. Our work is about inspiring people to continually, consciously regenerate themselves, heart sets, their thinking, mindsets, their actions, doing, and their being, intentions. Our work is to inspire love and light, trust and respect, character and values as pillars for holding space in order to see ourselves in new ways and within new possibilities at all times. I'm going to talk about patriarchy as a system amongst many systems. Patriarchy is not just a socially constructed system where males have primary power and predominate. It is also an integral system where male dominance is enforced by violence, which is the product of war. It is a system where the control of female sexuality ensures the transfer of private property and slaves, which are spoils of war in the male line. Lastly, the system as a whole is legitimated by religion. And it is within that patriarchal system that we do the dance and understand that patriarchy is not eternal, nor is it universal. It arose in history and is inseparable from the rise of warfare and other forms of domination. During and after World War II, the women's suffrage movement started. It took 72 years for laws to be changed so that women were considered to be people and they could participate in voting. Today, we have real wars raging in our globe and different forms of war. Systems we find ourselves in are waging war to steal who we are and who we know ourselves as. They have conditioned us, programmed us, and the main weapon is fear. The main weapon is fear. It is critical to understand these systems: patriarchy, racism, sexism, capitalism, education, religion, name them all, and how they have conditioned us. We think we are living our lives, but we are living someone else's story and agenda. And that is why in the work that we do, we work with people to find who they are. Because the tragedy of a person is when they don't know who they are. But most times we have given up our power and we don't even know it. In our work, we speak of reclaim, the process through which we peel off all the conditioning, all that has taken away who we are. And that is what these times are about. They are about remembering. It is time to remember. It is time to reclaim our voice and agency. It is time to reclaim our femininity. It is time to go up the mountain and stand at the mountaintop and remember. Reclaim for me is a learning that I got from working with so-called hopeless and helpless women living with HIV and AIDS and children who had lost their parents because of HIV and AIDS. And I didn't understand the power of a person knowing who they are, knowing their circumstances, owning and taking responsibility, until one of my kids, an orphan, said to me, I may be an orphan, but I'm not the one who is dead. He understood. He has what it takes within him, which all of us have within us, the divine essence of life, capital L, life, that reminds us who we are when systems have taken our voice and agency. So reclaim is about reclaiming our wastelands, our conditioning, our programming. And the R stands for taking responsibility. To take responsibility is to create awareness, to understand, embody and own what has stopped me from knowing who I am. Taking responsibility is also being accountable, not hiding, not burying my head in the sand, but standing in the presence of a disease like HIV and AIDS, or a situation like having no parents, and saying, I will overcome this. The E stands for empoweredness. Empowerment is what someone does for you. Empoweredness is what you choose to do with that gift. A gift is not a gift until it is given and received. Empoweredness, stepping into the gifts that have been offered. It's a space of grace. The C stands for courage. Courage to see and step into that which I am afraid of and step into it anyway. Courage is about taking ownership of taking responsibility and living my empoweredness. The L stands for love and light. Everyone is born with love and light. And until I reclaim my love and light from the systems that have stolen it, I will never be love and light for someone else. But each one of us is born with love and light. The A stands for adjustiveness, which is dancing with life. A river flowing from the mountains to the ocean never stops to have a conversation with a boulder to tell it to get out of its way. It chips away at the rock or finds its way around the obstacle. I call it dancing with life. We are called to dance with life, not to just stop and complain and have conversations with boulders that are going nowhere. Dancing with life. The I stands for intuition, divine wisdom, divine knowing, which each one of us has. And it is there to balance our crazy minds. Divine wisdom holds our hand and takes us where we need to go. And the M stands for mindfulness. Mindfulness, being present in my life now, every moment. It doesn't matter what I'm going through, what the obstacles are. But when I am present, I stand still and listen to the still small voice within me. Then I know I am known, I am loved, and I am love. And when we worked in this way with the women and the children, taking responsibility, blaming no one, and recognizing the power within themselves to overcome, we realized that we can build community because we are so interconnected, interdependent, and we need to include our voices in what we want to see as transformation in our communities. We were reminded that we are never alone. We are never alone. We are called to live our Ubuntu. I am because you are. But in living my Ubuntu, I need to embody my Utu, my humaneness, that which enables me to live my Ubuntu fully. It is time for women to wake up, to reclaiming our voice, our agency, our womanhood, because we've buried it in patriarchy. We succeed because we behave, we do things like men within these systems. We are being called to rise up, stand on the mountain, proclaim our femininity, our womanhood, and declare it the way forward for a planet that is hurting. We are being called to fetch from the deep well of our wisdom the waters to cool the fires that are burning our systems, our planet. We are being called to bring forth the water of wisdom to quench the thirst that is killing humanity. We are being called to rise up as women and to declare, I am whole, I am complete, I am pure, I am enough. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Karambu. Thank you. And now for Dr. Rhianne Neisler. In her book, The Chalice and the Blade, Dr. Eisler shifts the paradigm from domination to partnership. Her subsequent books and her groundbreaking work at the Center for Partnership Studies prepares us for this model. Rhianne has a conflict at this moment, yet she'll join us here shortly, but she sent you these remarks addressing this question. Why is care and caregiving, intersectionality, and how we measure our outcomes critical for systemic solutions that result in ending a culture of domination and one of partnership?
Well, it is a pleasure to be with you, and I'm going to jump right in to say that yes, the COVID-19 pandemic is really a crisis, but it is also, to use the famous Chinese proverb, an opportunity. It's an opportunity because it has really revealed how fragile, how non-resilient, and how unjust and how unequal the old normal is and was. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic, if you really think about it, in this wealthy United States where I live, 1/4 of all children lived in poverty, not to speak of how much we've contributed really to the destruction of our life support systems. So no, despite all the talk about going back to normal, we don't want to go back to the old normal. We want to move to a new normal. And I call this new normal partnerism. And I know that many of you, this may be a new term. And that's precisely why I've introduced it. Because as Einstein said, we cannot solve problems with the same thinking, and yes, the same categories, the same language that created them. So I'm going to, in the very short time we have together, touch on 4 cornerstones that we must really address. And no, they're not what you read about in the paper or hear about in the news. They are fundamentals that we must address if we are to have that more equitable, more sustainable, more peaceful future, a future in which, because partnerism includes all of humanity, a future in which, very different from what we keep hearing about if we, or keep looking at, if we use conventional social categories like right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, which all ignore or marginalize nothing less than the majority of humanity, women and children. That's right. Partnerism comes out of a far more holistic, integrated study of human societies and human evolution than what we have been told, because we've been told the wrong story about what is possible for us. We've told the wrong story about our past, our present, and the possibilities for a future. My newest book is Nurturing Our Humanity, and it draws heavily from neuroscience, showing that, yes, the old story is wrong. We humans, and quote, human nature is actually more inclined to sharing and to caring than to cruelty and insensitivity and violence. But in order to create social systems that support rather than inhibit these highly evolved capacities that we have as humans for consciousness, for caring, for creativity, we have to shift from what I've identified as a domination configuration of society to a partnership configuration. And as I go through these four cornerstones, you'll see why. The first cornerstone is childhood. And yeah, you don't, you look at studies of society, children are barely mentioned. But neuroscience shows that nothing less than how our brains develop, and with it, how we feel, how we think, how we act, including how we vote, is directly impacted in our very early years by the interaction of our genes with our environment, which is, of course, primarily our cultural environment, as mediated through families, education, religion, politics, economics. So we know today that what children observe, what children experience in their early years, actually forms nothing less than 85% of the brain's structure. That's huge, isn't it? So what do children learn in domination-oriented family? They learn that these rankings of domination, be it man over man, man over woman, race over race, religion over religion, that these are normal, these are natural, when in reality, they are not. They also learn that violence is, because these are families in which there is, where caring and coercion are mixed up together, so that people end up by actually voting for strongmen rulers, right? For people who see domination as the only alternative. They're a very punitive family, and this is true whether it was Nazi Germany, Khomeini's Iran, ISIS, the Taliban, or if you listen to the current president of the United States, who says it's all about domination, right? But this is acquired very early on, and we know today from neuroscience that we have to shift from the so-called traditional, yes, violence and coercion, fear-based child rearing, parenting, other caregivers, to authoritative rather than authoritarian, non-violent child rearing. And that takes me directly to gender, because you don't hear much about gender. Well, you hear much more about it today, which is a trend toward partnerism, which is very important. But the fact of the matter is that if you really think about it, uh, the model that children internalize and that we all have learned of humanity, where one form of humanity, the male form, is considered superior over the other basic form of humanity, the female form is a template, isn't it, for in-group versus out-group thinking, starting with the in-group of mankind and the female other. And that template is then really very quickly and easily applied to a different race, to a different religion, to a different sexual orientation. Uh, but not only that, we have inherited a gendered system of values, which not only, I mean, and we've all inherited this, which not only informs what is considered important in families, but in politics and in economics. Think about it for a moment. There always seems to be enough money, doesn't there, for what is stereotypically, now this has nothing to do with anything inherent in women and men, is associated with, quote, real masculinity, which is defined as not being like a woman. In other words, not being caring, not being, quote, soft, certainly not caring for children, for babies, for health. You know, that's women's work. Uh, so both Marx and Smith, who are the fathers of capitalism and socialism, really perpetuated this, and so does GDP. This view that somehow there's always enough money for prisons, you know, the punitive male head of household in domination systems, or for uh, weapons and wars, you know, the dominator hero as killer, but somehow there isn't enough money for health care, for child care, for all of the things that this pandemic has shown are essential. Which takes me, of course, because I really want to wind this up very quickly, uh, to the fourth cornerstone, story and language. You know, the old language, as I said, the old social categories that really marginalize or ignore the relationship between what happens to the majority of humanity, women and children, and what happens in politics and in economics, is the wrong story. But it's not only that. We are told that human nature is bad when we're finding out what I just said, that actually all things being equal, which means having a partnerism rather than a domination-oriented way of structuring families, politics, economics, religion, education, etc., that is fundamental to everything in our lives. So what I'm trying to tell you is that these are basics, these are foundations. And I am heartened by the fact that for the last 300 years, all the progressive social movements have challenged one tradition of domination after another, from the divinely ordained right of kings, so-called divinely ordained to rule, to the also so-called divinely ordained right of men to rule over women and children, to the also so-called divinely ordained right of a, quote, superior race to rule over a, quote, inferior one, all the way to the environmental movement, challenging our once hallowed conquest of nature, which at our level of technological development could mean the end of our species. But they haven't paid enough attention to these foundations. And so I urge you all, do whatever you're doing, continue to do it, but see to it that there is economic support, higher value given to the work of caring and caregiving, which will then affect positively women, children, and all of us, really. And I want to end on a very practical tool that we've developed, which is social wealth economic indicators. And we're working also on a social wealth index, which shows the economic value, yes, of the work that is ignored in GDP and is really ignored or marginalized in most so-called GDP alternatives. The work of caring for people, starting in early childhood, and caring for our natural life support systems. So let's do it for ourselves, for our children, and generations to come. I thank you.
Thank you, Rhianne. And now it's again a great, great pleasure to introduce a colleague and dear friend, Pam Rashford from India. She's the past chair of the high-level National Commission on the Status of Women of India and co-creator of a partnership model, a democratic model, a model that is truly the caring economy called the Indian Women's Parliament. So, welcome, Pam. And how does your work help reclaim the women's power, their own power that they can reclaim, and work within these old structures of domination while creating the new structures?
Thank you, Anne. Namaste. Dear Anne, Sandy, and all the co-panelists, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well.
First of all, let me take the opportunity to thank the organizers and Sandy and our organization, Sarah, for conceiving and conceptualizing the General Congress of Women and its launch on a very important day, that is International Day of Peace. And thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored and privileged to be part of this launch. But before I share my thoughts on the question that Anne has posed, permit me to say a few things in general. I appreciate your plan, long-term plan, with launch today of GCWs to have monthly meetings on the 12 critical areas of Beijing Platform for Action for innovative solutions and replicable models. We are meeting at a time when on the one hand, we are commemorating Beijing plus 25, SDGs plus 5, but we are also having the adverse accounts of socio-economic impact of COVID-19. Today only in the afternoon, my organization had organized a meeting with the migrant workers and how they have lost their livelihood. It was just terrible to sit through to listen to their woes. And so I thought I must also deviate from the question that is posed to me. And that is when we are talking about this, UNDP, UN Women reports, all are testifying and providing us evidence to that. But what is missing in this whole process are the missing voices of women. When it comes to decision-making processes to address the impact and also planned recovery in the post-pandemic period, there are no voices of women at all, and that is a major concern to me. And of course, second is, since you are going to plan Beijing plus 25 events on the critical areas, as we commemorate that and you are going to do this, what I would advise you is that we should look at 12 critical areas that you, one of course is to assess that how, the existing inequalities have been exacerbated by this pandemic. And secondly, like poverty, economy and all that. Secondly, the gains that we had made since Beijing 25 are being lost in this whole process, be it education, health, violence against women, girl child. In India, I tell you, millions of girls are now out of school. They don't have that digital technology. They don't have the smartphone so that they can be online for education. So when we talk about all these, we have to keep in mind. So we have to address the new social norms that are, upcoming as a result of this pandemic. And now coming to the question that Anne has posed, I think it is time to revisit our structures, our strategies, and reinforce what has worked and what has not worked. And as I would share my experiences and work at the grassroots level, be it my country or even at the global fora, what we need to say is that women must have spaces and must have voices. They must be heard. I think these two things, when we are talking about spaces, we have to say women need to have spaces. They must have voices, and these voices must be louder on all forums, from international to local, and I can call this whole process as global. Some people use the word empower. I don't think we need to empower women. They are empowered, they have vision, they have perspectives, they are humanistic, they are peace lovers. And what we think is, what is missing is that their voices for a just, secure, peaceful, and sustainable world. So in this context, I would like to revisit the structure that Anne wanted me to talk about, and that is of organizing women's parliament. This women's parliament was with an idea of an alternative space for alternative voices. Why I'm saying an alternate space? Because for years together, more than 2 decades, we have been hearing of, the bill for reservation of seats for women in the parliament and assemblies has been pending. Every political party at every election promises that, but it doesn't come to. What has happened is that we have, even today, only 14% women who are elected to the national parliament. So I've been working with women at the national level. I've been working with women elected to the bodies, and we have a manual which says she too can build the nation. So through this manual, we have tried to train the women, and the process we did was that we elected the number of women seats that are available in our lower house, that is 545 women elected by women. Now they were given a training, in the democratic processes and what I call as inclusive politics. And the members elected by the women, I must share with you, are from diverse communities, reflecting intersectionality, and members of all ages, differently abled women, and all that. The 4-day parliament that we ran proved to be a challenge to the system of patriarchy, to the whole dominant economic system of neoliberal capitalism. The women's major groups, or when we go to HLPF, high level political forum during the SDGs, we always hear the slogan, women want, the feminists want systemic change. But our parliament did reflect that, and that is quite some years back that we had this parliament. It did reflect that they challenged the dominant economic system of neoliberal capitalism. And this was so very clear from the policy statements, the bills that were issued, whether it was health policy, education policy, agriculture policy, but more important than that, the defense, the foreign policy, and the financial statement and the budget. My previous speaker talked about GDP. We did not present our model, the budget based on GDP. What we presented our budget was on gross national happiness. So that was the budget that we took up, and all the revenues and all that, that was a unique budget. Give me one more minute, right? So this is how this thing. And what I want to say, taken a minute more, is to say that in the backdrop of this, when you are planning the GCWs, right, kindly take Beijing to assemblies. This is the new structure I'm talking about. Take the Beijing to local assemblies. And I say that if you go to local assemblies, what are the issues they are there in the Beijing that the women do not know at the grassroots? Only they don't know the word Beijing, but they know the issues of poverty, economy, health, education. So let us go to them, create awareness, and I would say, we'll be doing a great service of commemorating Beijing in the true sense. If we localize Beijing, localize SDGs, and bring transformative order for a just, equitable world without horizontal inequalities and have systemic distortions. Finally, I would say women can do it, they will do it, but let us be catalytic agents to do that. I am a dreamer, but I am a doer too. And I'm sure all of us can dream and bring that change for the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Pam. Oh my goodness. Now we have Jean Shinoda Bowlin, and she's a Jungian psychiatrist, activist, accomplished author, and has written many books, including The Millionth Circle, that inspires circles worldwide. And her latest book is called Artemis, the Indomitable Spirit in Every Woman. So my question for you, our question for you, Jean, is how does the Artemis archetype help us to find our passion and use our passion for action?
Well, I'm delighted to bring up Artemis because I've not spoken about Artemis for quite a while. Been speaking more in UN speak and various things like that. And it's much more interesting to talk about how it is that story reflects who we are. And every woman who has tuned into this broadcast, who has a sense of sisterhood, who has a sense of innate a quality that from the time you were a very little girl, and you realize that because you were a little girl and not a little boy, that you might have had limits on how you could behave and what you could do. And that's when you first came up with the passionate cry, "It's not fair." So there's an innate sort of passionate energy that has to do with what you feel is right and what you feel is wrong. And it starts out very early, just as the goddess Artemis, who was the goddess of the hunt and goddess of the moon, was from her very beginning an advocate for mothers, for example, in that she was the firstborn of twins, which means that she came into the world as an egalitarian newborn. She was the firstborn daughter with her twin brother. Her twin brother, Apollo, was the god of the sun. So she's the goddess of the moon and also the archetype of the maiden energy with the bow and arrow. She can aim at any target and hit it. So she can focus. Not every little baby girl that comes into the world starts out with that capacity to be focused on something, to want to grab for something. There's an innate something that we are born into this world with. And this is what the Jungian platform of having a sense of, we come in with instincts or archetypes. We come in with a personality that you see in the newborn nursery. So from the very beginning, there's an energy that is who we are. And that energy then can be named as an archetype, which Artemis is a Greek goddess of the hunt and moon, whose Roman name or Latin name was Diana. She is the archetype of sisterhood, among other things, and sister and brotherhood, because from the moment she was born, and archetypes are not like real human beings, in her story, from the moment she was born, to Leto, who was a pre-Olympian goddess, and her father was Zeus. So she comes in with quite a parentage. But she is born without much difficulty, but then her first experience is watching her own mother in the most atrocious labor in classical mythology, because of the dynamics of Hera, who was jealous of Leto, Hera was married to Zeus after all, formally, but Zeus was the archetype of the patriarchal philanderer and the man in power. At any rate, her mother then, because of that, the jealousy situation, went into the longest labor. And so from the very beginning, Artemis came to her aid and midwifed. She was a midwife actually to her mother and the delivery of her twin brother Apollo. So we start out with her as an archetype acting. And then we don't hear about her until she's 3 years old, when her mother brings her up to Mount Olympus to meet her father. And her father is delighted with her. And if you are an Artemis who had a father who was delighted with you, then what happens next is metaphorically is what happens. Zeus was delighted with this little daughter and put her on his knee and said, little girl, what would you like? I'll give you anything. And she, at 3 years of age, knew exactly what she wanted. I mean, this is one of the focus elements of an Artemis little girl. She said, I want bow and arrows to hunt with. I want playmates to join me. I want a hound to be with me. And I don't want to wear this goddess gown. I want to wear a tunic so I can run around freely in the wilderness. And she said, I want to choose them myself. So she did. So here we have a goddess that we next hear from her as the patron goddess of girls before puberty. She was the original sort of den mother, I suppose, of Girl Scouts and Girl Guides, because in that period of time, under the protection of Artemis, you were free as a girl in ancient Greece to be yourself out in nature, after which you had to conform. And when you were under her protection, you were called the Arctoi, or Artemis's little bears. And the bear is an image, one of the images of Artemis. But to shorten what she means is to think about her as the archer with unerring aim. That if you can focus, this is one of the reasons why women who end up often doing something that required lots of focus, like for me, it was going to medical school, is you have to be able to focus. You have to have an ability to set a goal of your own and aim for it and be undiverted as you head for it. Now that means that you are able to focus, but it also means that you often need to learn to listen and hear voices around you. But that happens later in life. It begins with your ability to focus on a goal of your own making, not one that somebody said, you should be this. Some part of the girl says, I want to do that. And that's the bow and arrow, the name, to have a target to aim for. She was a goddess of the wilderness. She wasn't like her sister goddess Athena, who loved the city. So the wilderness is that unknown terrain, the part that you can explore yourself. And we are entering a new time in history where the women who are exploring new ways to do things is us. We are women who are Artemis, naturally have a sense of looking out for the vulnerable the vulnerable. She did, this particular archetypal goddess, and she was a natural sister. And she traveled with a band of women, and she also had an egalitarian relationship with her brother Apollo. So those are the basic kinds of things. And then the last thing, besides the archer business, she is the goddess of the moon. And when you see things by moonlight, it's mystical. So there is an innate sort of sense of the sacredness of the world that we live in if you have an Artemis archetype in you. And so it's a pleasure to be with all the women who tuned into this program as well. Probably have Artemis as one of your archetypes. So this is a sisterhood that has a target of helping the vulnerable, a target of being connected with the wilderness. She loved the outdoors. so that my last book, Like a Tree, How Trees and Women Can Save the Planet, is very Artemis as well. And of course, one might say that of all the major archetypes, and we all have more than one in us, you, like me, probably have Artemis as one of your leading archetypes, and it's a pleasure to share the archetype with you. Thank you.
Mahalo, Jean. That was beautiful. Thank you. As founding director of Tree Sisters, Claire Dubois' fierce determination and unyielding resolve inspires us into action to restore and regenerate our planet's forests and protect the sacred. Claire, can you please tell us, why is it important to acknowledge nature as our nature in order to organize for successful, sustainable, regenerative, resilient, and exciting actions?
Well, let's see what comes out of my mouth in relationship to that question. You never quite know what's going to come out of my mouth. I just want to start by, again, thanking everybody. I'm sitting here inside the woven tapestry of the wisdom, the different threads, and I've been letting all of your words have their way with me. And I'm in such a state. I'm in such a, like, it's so interesting what's going on inside me. And Karambu, your words, so many of your words just hit like bells, like pure bells that are still ringing. And one of the things that you said, you know, you think you're living your own life, but because of your conditioning, you're living someone else's. I've never heard it said so brilliantly and so clearly as in those words. And I'm sitting with that on one hand, and Pam, I don't think women need to be empowered on the other. And it's just like those two things are having their way with me in this moment. And women, as you've said, we've been living a lie. We've been living a lie of our less than, because there is no less than. We've been living an inherited state of subjugation of our own energies for fear of bringing ourselves forward. Men, let's not say men, let's say patriarchy. Let's say the shadow masculine may have been kneeling on our throats, but it doesn't change what it means to be a woman. It doesn't change the power and the potency and the brilliance and the force of fierce love that we each are. No amount of suppression that is done to us changes the essence of what a woman is. And I don't want to negate men when I say that our bodies or our energetic wiring, you know, how we function as women is a much more instinctual, intuitive experience of being alive than a man. I'm not saying men aren't intuitive. I'm not saying men aren't instinctual. But when you understand how energy flows through the chakra systems of the masculine and the chakra systems of the feminine, you understand that women are actually woven, we're formed, we're constructed energetically to sense, to listen, to feel, because we're wired to feel the health of every system, the balance of every system, to try and bring it back into harmony. We're harmony wired, we're health wired, we're vitality wired, and we're love wired. And there is an absolute perfection in the dance between the masculine and the feminine, where certain strengths exist on both sides, but certain strengths are no more important than other strengths. I can be so rude when I get on my patriarchal rank with my husband, and it's just like, just because you can lift heavy objects doesn't mean that the feminine attributes of courage and wildness are any less important. Because if you can't feel your innate relationship to a system, how can you know how to work with it? There's the feminine and the masculine to me. If you can't feel your relationship with all things, how can you know how to construct a world that serves all things? So my question to all of us is, if our brakes are still on, why are we funding those brakes with our vital life force? Why are we investing in the brakes that hold us back, the brakes that we have on that stop us from running full throttle? Because if Pam is right, and we don't need to be empowered, and it's such a radical concept for me, that, but I actually think you're right, Pam, because it's all there. We don't need more of what we are. We just need to take our brakes off, so the more that we are comes into its fullest expression. And the more that we are is nature, because we are formed of this natural world. We are built out of her. Our bodies are her. We have rain and rivers and oceans in our blood. We're breathing with the trees. Our passion is the fire, and our instinct and our intuition is the fire. We are grass and soil. We are living matter. We are it all. We have the cosmos in our cells. You know, we're supposed to be something like 0.0009% matter, and the rest of us is fresh air. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that actually is the cosmos, and there is no limit on the cosmos. So when you hold the perception that actually women don't need to be empowered, the Kogi would agree. They would say women are the black earth. They are power. They are the source of fertility on this planet. Then if we can shift into, you know, I mean, the first place I usually go is forget what you even think it means to be human, because we're not living it. This isn't what humanity is. Well, then let's forget what it even means to be a woman. Because if you let yourself be completely mysterious to yourself, if you for a moment just stop believing any of the conditioning that we've had, like beaten into us, that's in our epigenetics, that runs back millennia, when humanity's been trying to figure out what it is and what its role is with regarding the dominance of each other and the dominance of nature. That's not the essence of what a human being is. Our junk DNA, which is a vast amount of our DNA, is the DNA of every other living thing on this planet. We are encoded with the whole of life. We are not here to cause our own extinction through mindless shopping. That is not the future of our species. That's not what our ancestors toiled for, so that we could shop ourselves into extinction because we don't have the imagination to do anything else. That's not what women are, nor are we just consumers. Well, I'd almost like us to say we're not even women, because I don't like what women have been told about ourselves. And actually, what about we're not even human? Because this is not what a human being shows up as. So if you take those fundamental labels off, then you can take your brakes off at the same time. You can take off your brakes and you can say, I am the force of the ocean. I am the cosmos. I am the wind that knows exactly where to blow. I am the ability to flex and flow like a reed. I am the song of the birds. I am the volcano that knows exactly how and when to erupt and which way to, you know, carve a new land. If all of that is inside me, why am I worrying whether I'm too much? You know, for a woman to think that we're too much is the most preposterous things, because we are it all. And when you are it all, too much doesn't even register on the scale, because there is no scale. There's just what of me needs to come through in this moment if I take my brakes off in relationship to this circumstance, which drives me frankly nuts, because it's nothing to do with sacredness, it's nothing to do with honoring, and it's all to do with ego. So here comes Kali just saying, no, let me express to you in this moment exactly what needs to be expressed to honor the truth of nature as it arises through me, because I'm not tolerating, and I'm going to swear and I apologize, the bullshit of patriarchy anymore, because it's nothing to do with truth, and it's nothing to do with the sacred, and it's nothing to do with serving life, and it's nothing to do with our children, and it's nothing to do with where we need to be going, and it's not an expression of what humanity is even for. So I'm not going to tolerate it for a second longer. So then all you're up against is the reality of the conditioned trauma that's in our bodies, which is a lot to do with what's been done to us, and there's an awful lot to do with what we've then done to ourselves to manage that experience. And I'm not going to diminish the hell that will rise through our bodies when we try to take our brakes off, as our nervous systems just go, oh, don't do it, you know what's going to happen. And that is where we need to both understand it's just sensation. We can manage it. We don't need to avoid pain. We give birth to children. We come out the other side. We know that we can alchemize pain by fully feeling it. The gift of it is that every time you move through the pain that is rising and the lies that are rising in your body to say, don't do it, you're not good enough. Don't do it, it'll never work. Don't do it. What will people think? Don't do it, you're going to be attacked. Don't do it, your husband will leave you. Don't do it, your friends will think you're nuts. And first of all, you need to ask yourself, am I so invested in people who want me to be limited that I need to perpetuate the limitation of myself? 2, am I actually living the longings that need to move through my body in order for me to be fully expressed? If I'm not, do I want to go to my deathbed feeling ungiven? 3, do I have the support systems in my life present with sufficient people who want to see me as liberated as I am? If not, find yourself a woman's circle. And find yourself a woman's circle that is not invested in wound bonding, that is not sitting there just going, oh, it's so terrible. And it is so terrible, but that is actually going, yes, it's terrible. Now, how do we bring our hearts fully forward? How do we alchemize this pain? How do we liberate ourselves into the fullness that we are? Yes. Is that 1 minute or just shut up? 1 minute or shut up?
I would never
1
say
minute. Okay. Let's make it count.
1 minute.
yes.
So what are you investing your life force in? And are you still investing in your brakes? Are your brakes still on? I think the majority of us still have our brakes on, because if we didn't, our world would look completely different. Well, here is our moment. Here is our moment. There is absolute ecological destruction going on because of COVID. COVID has everybody much more held down. The destruction of our world has ramped up. God knows how much. Deforestation has completely ratcheted up through COVID. So has dam building. So has the death of indigenous peoples in the forest. I'm sitting here in California. I've been evacuated already. It's been hell. Life has changed forever in California, Oregon, and Washington, like it changed forever in Australia last year. You do not want this reality. It is terrifying. It is coming to a home near you right now, because all these 5 million acres of rainforest and forest and temperate forest and all our oak trees are now in the air, warming all of us up. This is escalating. What does that say? It says the crucible of our transformation is getting more and more unforgiving. It's getting more and more immediate. It's getting more and more personal. It's getting more and more dangerous. Okay, that's the world that we have created for ourselves, for our emergence. So now it's time to emerge. Now is the time. The feminine would not leave it to the last minute to rise unless she knew that she could do something extraordinary. Do not think you know what it means to be a woman. You do not. What we've been told that we are is nothing to do with who and what we really are. Drop the labels, drop the stories, drop the excuses, take off your brakes. The cosmos lives you. The trees are breathing you. You are the ocean. You are the tempest. You are the tornado. Bring your truth. It is needed. Be honest to yourself about the life that you want to live, and live it now, because the gauntlet of climate change is the biggest that will ever be thrown down. Climate change is not a spectator sport. Get off the bench. There you are.
Well,
Yes,
Claire, this entire initiative in a nutshell is about taking the brakes off. So Thank you all. Dr. Rhianne Neisler has just joined us, and just in elegant timing, as usual, with Dr. Eisler. Now we are, hello and greetings, and now we are moving into our question and our answer session. We have invited you all to submit questions in advance during a registration that we could all select for this call. It was so difficult to choose just one or two, so here are three, if we have time. We are putting the remainder of the questions that you sent in, inviting everyone's wisdom on our Facebook page, which you can find at General Congress of Women on Facebook. Our first question is actually combining two questions. Yvonne Scott from New Mexico asks, as an elder, my work is assisting my grandchildren and anyone who is open and willing to reconnect with the earth and become guardians of her. What do you see as the most effective processes for awakening others and igniting love for this planet and all that resides on her? Now that's coupled with Barbara Beasley's question, and she's from British Columbia. What can you imagine that would be the most significant question? I beg your pardon. What would you imagine that would be the most significant collective action women could do to ignite systemic transformation? With the time we have, the remaining 30 minutes, who would like to respond first? And by the way, it's impossible for me to ring your bell, so self-time, if you would. Who would like to address that? And Dr. Eisler's back with us, so perhaps we can start with you. If you would like. If not, we can move on to whoever else would like to say something.
Well, I'm a systems person, so I have introduced really, as some of you know, 4 cornerstones that we have to pay attention to. And they're all interconnected, and they're not the usual thing. Because we, I think, need to be conscious that we've been told some very false stories. So I would really start with story and with language, which is one of the 4 cornerstones. But I also want to mention the other 3, which are probably going to surprise you. Childhood, because we know from neuroscience that nothing less than how our brains develop largely hinges on what children experience and observe in their very early years. And this just so affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we vote, what kind of policies we support, whether they're punitive or caring. Gender, and again, not just because they're 2 basic forms of humanity, and we have to really stop thinking of them, anything connected with women or girls, as just a women's issue, but because it affects our values, whether we do or we do not pay attention to caring, nonviolence, caregiving. These are the things that are essential for a better future. And of course, economics, but going beyond the struggle between capitalism and socialism we hear so much about, which is nonsense because they're both antiquated. They came out of the 1700s and 1800s, and we're now in the 21st century post-industrial age. But a caring economics of partnerism. So one story we have to change is that we can't build something better because we know that for millennia, we oriented more to what I call the partnership rather than domination system. Number 2, a story that we have to change is that caring policies are ineffective in business and in economics because in fact they're the most effective investment a nation can make is investing in caring for people, starting in childhood, and caring for nature. So it's very difficult for me as a systems person to say this is the one thing. But I think changing our stories and changing our language, because linguistic psychologists tell us that the categories social categories in particular, provided by a language channel our thinking. So it's impossible to think of alternatives. And that's why I've introduced two new categories which no longer marginalize or ignore the majority of humanity, women and children, the partnership system and the domination system. So there's a lot to do, but we can do it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rhianne. Anyone else like to address the question?
I would. I think that one of the important things is that women often do very well when they have others who have their back. And this is the point of being in a women's circle, especially one that calls upon sacred energy. And when we get to the point that we are about to venture out to speak truth to power, venture out to do something that is new for us to do, and we feel kind of uncomfortable at initiating a new part of ourselves, to have 2 or 3 women who know exactly what motivates you, and that you may appear really strong in public, but there's that other part of you that is vulnerable, and to have the support of your sisters and the support of prayer, meditation, visualization, so that you go out and inviting the invisible world of spirit to be with you when you are about to give birth to some part of yourself. The one who speaks truth to power in a new way is giving birth to that part of herself, and the midwives are the other women who get it. So I would encourage all of the people, all the women and others, and I did notice there was at least one man on who put in a comment, but to find like-spirited, like-souled, 2 or 3, as many as 6 altogether, to support your birthing with spirit what it is you want to bring into the world. And it's fun. It's fun to become more of who you are. Very Jungian too. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you all. I will say something very briefly. The removing of the brakes that Claire spoke about, in my view, is the removing of the obstacles that we have put in front of us, or have been put in front of us because of the systems. And the removing of the brakes, in my view, is about creating a new story. For the grandmother who is raising grandkids, it is an amazing opportunity to create a new story. And it is also not an easy endeavor, because there are so many levels of new stories that need to be created. Currently, I've been dealing with a case of incest, and the way the media reports it is something like a child was raped. But no, they never say something like, so I asked him, why don't you say something like a 3-year-old was raped by a man? Because when you just say a 3-year-old was raped, it's like it is a fault or something like that. There's no depth into that kind of statement. So what I'm saying is that language, we need to change the language. The sisterhood that you hold has to be diverse, because there are ways that have been brought up that has just brought what is similar to me, that or people who just think like me, that now we've lost the, that essence of how diverse we are, the importance of inclusiveness. We've forgotten how interconnected we are. So going beyond the home group and extending further. So it is a beautiful place to be. And it is also inviting a new way of seeing and being, because you have to recreate this knowing, unknowing, ambiguity as you go. Like someone said, there's no road. We make the path as we go. And then we have this river story that says that when a river is going into the ocean, it is very scared because it is scared to be a part of the ocean. So it walks with in trepidation, like what will happen? How will I change? But the invitation is not to be a part of the river. The invitation is, I am becoming the ocean. That makes a big difference. Thank you.
If there is no more responses, we can actually ask our third question if you like. Anybody else would like to respond to that question? Oh, no, move on? Okay. All right. Karen Hurley from Michigan asks, how can women and girls strengthen our voices in conversation and work towards peaceful, diverse, and just futures? How do we find our voice?
Well, I'll start since nobody has. I think of the bonobo chimpanzees and how really joining together is so vital. But not joining together as we so often had as sort of the auxiliary to whatever the goals are of the controlling or ruling or dominant group, but joining together to speak for those who have not been heard from. And that is all of the so-called out groups, isn't it? So yes, I mean, going back to what Jean said, and I really love what you said too, Karumbo. We have more power now than we think. I mean, there was a time not so long ago, and in some places it still is true, where for a woman to speak up risked her life, risked her limb, risked a lot of violence, frankly. And that's still happening. But as that becomes more and more not the norm, not the ideal norm anymore, because it was the ideal norm, even for women, you know. I mean, that's what men do, you know. Then we need to speak up, but we need to tell, as I said, as Karumbo said, a new story. To unite in telling that yes, women and men both have the capacity for violence, for insensitivity, for cruelty, but we have an enormous human capacity for caring, for nonviolence, for sensitivity, for creativity. And unfortunately, so much of what is considered soft or, quote, feminine, like caring, caregiving, nonviolence, has been systematically devalued in what I call domination-oriented societies. So if you want to focus on one thing, focus on the reward system. And I want to say that we at the Center for Partnership Studies have developed new measurements of economic health to encourage investment in caring for people starting in early childhood and caring for our Mother Earth, which, by the way, neither capitalist nor socialist theory have a word to say about the importance of that. It relegates care work to reproductive, you know, something to be, well, in the times that Marx and Smith wrote, caring for people, healthcare, childcare was to be done for free by a woman in a male-controlled household, okay? That's where they were coming from. So we need a way of showing, and we've developed new metrics called social wealth economic indicators, a social wealth index, that I think we all as women need to get behind, because it's the only index that can really change the devaluation of women and the so-called feminine, whether it's in women, men, or social or economic policy. So I wanted to just tell you, you can find out more about it at centerforpartnership.org or at partnerism.org.
Rhianne, it's so amazing to be in the same sphere as you. I just want to express how amazing it is to be with all these incredible women. I'm going to say something really personal in answer to this question, because you may think I've always been like this, as in outspoken, a little bit on the edge, or quite a lot on the edge, you know, how I come across. If you'd met me in my early 20s, you would have known I was very mentally ill. I could not walk down the aisle of a plane or a train or a bus. I couldn't walk through closed doors. I couldn't show myself in public easily at all. I certainly couldn't speak up. I was crippled. Crippled because of an exceptionally abusive father, amongst other things. And I was dissatisfied. I was fundamentally dissatisfied. As my first meditation teacher said to me, my God, you are like a hurricane trapped in a thimble. And I remember at the time feeling completely seen for the first time, and also thinking, my God, every woman is a hurricane trapped in a thimble. And then, and getting to this place where, like, I did not know how to get out of it, because it had been so hammered into me. There was no part of me that my father hadn't trampled. But I did it, evidently. I mean, I'm not fully out yet, but I'm not afraid anymore. Like, I'm genuinely not afraid. Just put me anywhere and I will let whatever is going to come out of my mouth come out of my mouth, because it's not me, because it's nature. And I don't have to take any of that personally, because I've literally trained myself to let something else come through, because I don't care who Claire is anymore, because what I've been taught isn't it. That's what I know. What I've been taught isn't it. And one of the ways in which I did it was by dancing. And I don't mean dancing as in 2 steps forward and 1 step back, as in what needs to come through my body, and can I let it move me? Can I let it move me? So when I drive through the forests of Colorado when they're all dead and absolute rage and grief want to move through me, I don't sit there just going, oh my God, this is terrible. And then, like, keeping all of that agony in my body. I'm like, ah, you know, it has to move through me. I have to clean my pipes out. I have to integrate it into me. Otherwise, I will avoid the agony in this world and go into an even more separated state. But if I can let the forests in my body move me, if I can let the poisoned Pacific after Fukushima move through me, if I can let the voice of the trafficked children move through me, then I integrate them into myself, and their voices can move through my body. So then it's not about how do I bring my voice forward. For me, it's how do I stop bringing my voice forward, because it always wants to come forward, because life always has something to say about the subjugation of life, because that's not what we're for. So then it's just, where are the appropriate places for the hurricane that I am to actually come forward? Because actually I don't particularly want to blast against closed doors. I don't want to have to be somebody that persuades. I want to be somebody whose energy is so infectious that you can't not come with me, because that's what a river does. You know, the river isn't sitting there trying to figure out what it's doing. It doesn't know how to be anything other than a flow. That's it. It just flows. And that's what we all are. And that's back to the thing of, how do I take my brakes off? Well, are you allowing yourself to fully feel the things in your life that are upsetting you? Are you allowing yourself to fully feel your impotence? Are you allowing yourself to fully feel your brakes? Are you allowing yourself to fully feel what it's like to not have your voice be expressed? Can you feel where you're held back? And if so, can you take that feeling and move it into flow? Can you let your body unwind you? Can you let your body's wisdom unhook you on the inside in the places that it needs to? Can you enjoy crying, like really enjoy it, like it's this amazing tool that we have to alchemize the stuff that blocks us up? Can you let yourself roar? And if you're afraid of it, do it in the car with the windows closed, or do it into a pillow. But can you let it move so that as energy does its thing, you know, nature is exquisite. She's exquisite. Find something in nature that's not like an art form that just takes your breath away. But she's also wildly destructive, incredibly forceful. You know, she doesn't hold back, whether it's stripping naked as a tree at the end of the year, whether it's being fully in blossom, completely in fruit, you know, whatever she does, it's total. That's available to us, unless we're like this. So if we're like this, make that conscious, become as like trapped and brakes on as you possibly can, and then put some thumping good music on and let yourself dance your way out of your shackles. And if you're really embarrassed about that, get an audience and do it properly. Make yourself feel as embarrassed and as held back as absolutely possible until you cannot bear it 1 second longer, and have them all just applaud you while you just strip out of the conditioned nightmares that have nothing to do with you. I mean, that's a very overt way of putting it, but I just feel like there are, you know, if you can do the inner work, it's not about trying to figure out how to take this person with their brakes on and put them onto a global stage. It's about taking the brakes off on the inside so that you can't not be on a global stage. And then it's about, how do you actually do that? Well, it's all in your body. So let your body do it for you, but you have to be willing to feel what's in there so that it can alchemize. That's my answer. Jean.
I love what you said, because what you described was inhibition, change, and now you are speaking about becoming who you were meant to be. And that's what women universally need to do. We need to become who we were meant to be. And often we do this mostly as in the second half of life, and maybe in the last quarter even, when we're freer to become who we were meant to be. And for others right now, it's because we are in a liminal time, meaning we are in between what was and we can't go back, and we don't know yet what's to be. But what we do in this threshold liminal time shapes us and helps us to grow into who we were meant to be, and to say and feel and express what we have inside, and find that we are supported by the sacred world to grow into who we were meant to be. And thank you, Claire, for your personal decision to speak up and share this, because you are a beautiful example, really a beautiful example of how the thimble grew into connecting with the universe, and you are not by yourself at all, but Mother Nature and sisters and others are with you.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for all your thoughtful questions and answers. This has just been dynamic. Let us dance together. Before we close our circle, we want to remind you to stick around for our informal Q&A session. Our next call on October 21st, don't miss it. We'll introduce you to the Fruit of Life as an organizing tool for community actions, learn how we are organizing, and hear more about this initiative and what to expect each month in 2021. It will be a powerful year. You will all receive information about that, along with a recording of this call today in an email following this call. Thank you again to all of our inspiring, fierce speakers, and to all of you for being here with us. And now we're going to have our grandmother, Flora de Mayo, will close our sacred circle.
Mother, you have called us. all of the women of the world. You called us from the four directions, and we come to you as our grandmothers of the four directions call upon us. It is the spirit of the feminine right now, beloved mother, that is needed. It's needed to change all of this uncertainty, all of this that is going on, that it is so out of balance right now. You have called us and we have come. We have discussed, we have prayed, we have done ceremony, and we are sitting here at the table to continue our dialogue for the future of all of the children of the world, beloved Creator. We are the givers of life. And I thank you, beloved Mother, for standing always with us and reminding us that we are the givers of life. In the name of all of the children of the future, I thank you.
So we invite you now to take just a minute to embody the last 90 minutes together, where we will be taking a deep breath. Maybe we'll get up and dance, reflect. We'll take this as a reflecting movement, perhaps, writing your thoughts, whatever you wish. Just a few minutes, and I'll ring the bell and bring us all back, and then you can submit more questions to the speakers. So let's just take a moment, shake it off, soak it in, whatever works for you. I should be playing some raucous music. Okay. Oh.
Well, we still are in sacred circle because every day, every place, everywhere, all land is sacred and we're sacred. So we'll just continue on with some questions. But I just wanted to thank Claire about, somebody had just said to me the other day when we were in conversation, I was feeling very, very upset and depressed about all the wildlife that was being killed in hurricanes and in fires and etc. And she says, but you need to feel the joy. And I said, no, this is a visceral reaction. It hit me in the stomach. I feel horrible. I need to get it out. And I know that when women don't get it out, you stay depressed. So thank you for all. You know, this is now the time that we can take all this wisdom and embody it so that we become it. We are the wisdom keepers. So yes. Do we have a question that is just burning, or do we just want to carry on this great conversation? Because all of you have so much wisdom to give.
And I just want to add on to what you're saying as the, you know, crying is my superpower person here. But because I just want to say that because I milk my tears for whatever I can get out of them. If I start crying for no apparent reason, I will fully give myself. It's like I know in my past life, I mean, this one, I used to be somebody that would desperately try not to cry. And I was always very afraid of being too much. And I was also afraid of burdening other people with the need to fix me. Because we all seem to have this, you know, collusion around let's make it all better again. Well, you know, swallowing your own vomit doesn't make it better. And that's what's happening when you're not allowing yourself to cry. Like if the body viscerally needs to purge itself, whether it's vomit or whether it's emotion, it's the same thing. Swallowing your emotion when it's trying to move will make you sick, will genuinely make you sick. If I need to cry and I stop myself crying, I will migraine badly. And it's my, you know, so I've learned to cry on stage, on Facebook, like any public place, because generally speaking, if you put me in a large collective environment, what is not expressed in that environment will try and move through me because I'm the weakest link. My body knows how to cry. So I've learned to be the person that just cries while carrying on talking, because I won't stop that energy from moving through me. But what I will say about it is, generally speaking, I'll dance every morning. Like it's one of my practices. I need to move my energy because then I spend hours sitting at the laptop. The best days are when I cry, and they're the best days because something is dissolving. I don't need to know what it is. I don't need to analyze my emotion whatsoever because my body knows what it's doing. But in those moments when I'm moving and suddenly emotion comes, I'll like turn all my attention to the emotion so that it starts to like it's fully said yes to, and it can just move. I will always dance with a notepad and pen next to me, because if I cry, if I start crying, the next thing that happens are the creative ideas that are on the backside of that emotion will start to pour through. And I can almost never remember the moment that I stop crying and start writing, because I'll be just like in the middle of all of this, and it's just like, oh wow, and then I'm writing, and it's like there's the next thing, or there's the beginning of a poem, or there's a outrageous thing I want to do with a team, or there's another initiative or whatever, or there's just clarity because I've cleaned the pipes. And that's all it is for me. It's not about, oh, what are you crying about? You know, I've got different ways of answering people. You know, my husband luckily doesn't come anywhere near me now. Like if he hears the loud music come on, it's like, avoid her, stay upstairs until it stops. And he's like, do you really think that screaming into a cushion actually stops me being able to hear you screaming? This is like, well, you know. But he just leaves it, and then he'll come down and I'll say, so what have you got? You know, what came out of it? Because he's so aware that that's how I process, because I cannot, like, if you're not crying these days, you're not awake. Yeah. You're not awake to what's going on. And am I saying live in misery? No, we are the entire pendulum. You can't have all the good stuff without the bad stuff. A pendulum doesn't go halfway, avoid the bad stuff, and then just go back out. Life doesn't work that way. You got to swing all the way into the shadow to have access to all of your light. So he just says to me, you're just a full spectrum female. That's his description of me. You're a full spectrum female. You go all the way here. I'll scream the house down. I'll come straight back out. And then I'm just like, this is so exciting. You know, you don't stay there. You don't stay in the crap, but you will stay in the crap if you try and avoid it. You will, or if you try and swallow it. And you'll numb out through the not trying to feel. So the way of trapping yourself is by not trying to feel. The way of liberating yourself is by fully feeling, and your energy will be liberated, and it'll swing you back into the fullest expression of what you are. And when it comes to grief, this is your love. This is your love turned into a river. This is your love letter to Gaia, as Joanna Macy would say. You know, every time you cry, you're opening yourself up to either that the impossibility of dealing with what we're doing to each other or the planet. That is, you're coming into right relationship. Your tears let you come into right relationship, or your rage about what's happening. And when you're in closer relationship, you have more energy to do something about it and more clarity. So rock on, as far as I'm concerned. Like,
I love, Claire, that you talked about, and I think as women, we really need to embrace.
If the bag's like mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're frozen a little bit, Claire. Would you repeat the last thing you said? We didn't get it.
Oh, I stopped because I thought Joan Marie was saying something, but then I saw her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear what came out of her mouth. So, well, I have no idea. I have no idea how I ended that. All I would just say is, your tears. Don't be afraid of your emotion. Like, don't be afraid of your emotion. And as women, it's the one thing that we've been left that hasn't been taken from us. So one thing we don't have to fight for, because it's seen as our weakness. Therefore, we're entitled to it. Oh, women, they're so emotional. But, what's stronger, letting the full force of your grief rip through you and transform you from the inside out, or sitting there unable to get a single sob out of you? Like, not crying, being unemotional, which is what patriarchy would why do you think patriarchy is in the mess that it is? Because it can't feel the impact of its actions. It can't feel, it's frozen in a distortion. We don't have to have men understand that our emotionality is one of our greatest strengths. We can just get on and use it as a superpower to transform us from the inside out. It is a superpower. We're made to self-liberate through emotion. Anyway,
that's what I was going to share about healthy moral outrage, that if we just start looking and redefining rage as unbridled energy, and that if we learn to ride it and allow it to be wild and free and be in it, that will guide us in new and expanded ways. So I love what you're saying, and that was what I was just trying to roll in there.
There's a comment in the chat here. Can we clone your husband's soul, Claire? Isn't that lovely? I'm gonna have to share that with him.
Yeah.
I wish. What I'll say about my husband is a man called Marc Dubois, and Marc Dubois chained himself to a canyon bottom and threw away the keys in order to try and prevent his river from being dammed. He was prepared to lose his life for the river that he loved. And he was the most wanted man in America for about a week while the military searched for him to try and get him out of this river basin so that they could flood his river. Marc let his heartbreak completely transform him. He is a totally unique man because he dared to love so deeply, and then he lost his love. He lost that river canyon that he most passionately loved. So he's a perfect example of a man who, with the feminine principle, he's deeply feminine and deeply masculine. His heartbreak alchemized him into a voice for this planet unlike any other man I know. So and that's why he doesn't take my brakes off. He doesn't want me to have brakes on. That's why we're married, actually, is because we're both married to the earth first and to each other second, which means there is just complete alignment between us. Like, we're all in for the planet. So there is no holding anything back. There is only living full throttle on behalf of the world that we love. So beautiful. God bless my husband. And I don't know how we clone him, but I'll try.
Beautiful.
So I would imagine, Karuba, we are talking about what you said before of the love and the light and the dance and all the new stories that come out of this. So if you want to add to any of that, or I know Pam had to leave. It's late in India, not quite so late in Kenya, but please just, you started us out. And I think the other thing is, the message has always been, we got to do the inner work.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to leave too. So I just want to say that we are really reclaiming our full humanity. Rage you spoke about, that used to be a permitted emotion only for men.
Yes.
And to have a woman be angry, ooh, I mean, you know, she's a bitch, she's a ball breaker. At the same time, let's not forget what you said about your husband, Claire, that for men to care, that really subjected them to a lot of opprobrium, to a lot of diminishment, you know, as sissies, because we've been taught that real men, among, you know, the one thing they cannot be is like a woman. And I really want to say that my work has looked at gender from that perspective as an informing principle, that if we do not stop to devalue women and anything stereotypically in the domination traditions we've inherited associated with women or the soft, the feminine, then we really will continue to be in a society where it's just considered a quote women's issue, and therefore, of course, even though it affects half of humanity, I mean, think for a moment, right? Negatively, it's devalued. So if there's one thing I'd like to suggest, and this really does take me back to using the energy that we free to change the system and its rewards. Not only the nice Mother's Day and all of this nonsense, you know, that we've inherited, but to reward the work of caring for people, starting in childhood, caring for nature. You know that women over the age of 65 in this wealthy United States, according to the US Census Bureau, are almost twice as likely to live in poverty as men of the same age. Did you know that? No, because it's not publicized, is it? It should be. But the reason for it isn't just employment discrimination. It's because most of these women are or were either full or part-time caregivers. And that is either not rewarded at all, because our policies in the United States don't support it, or it's done for poverty wages in the market. So we've got to change this. And if we can unite around that one issue of showing, as we do through our social wealth economic index, the economic value of investing in caring for people, especially in our knowledge service age, because what we're really talking about is developing human capacity, aren't we? Which we're told, even by economists, is the most important asset in this knowledge service age. So never mind, you know, we can talk, because we have been talking a lot about human rights, about women's rights, about children's rights, but let's talk about economic efficiency, economic value, and change our reward system. And for that, we do need these new economic measures. And that's why I'm inviting all of you, publicize the social wealth index. They're the only so-called GDP alternatives that are really good for women, okay? That really make visible the price that we have paid in a system that devalues women and the so-called women's work of care. So with that, I will leave you.
Powerful.
I'm so glad, and I congratulate you on doing this. I congratulate all of you for the important part that you are playing in what really is, I think, coming out of the domination trance, accepting that things have to be so inequitable, that we have to have all this in-group versus out-group thinking, starting with the in-group of mankind and the female other, because that's a template, isn't it? It's not coincidental that whether it's Khomeini in Iran or Hitler in Germany or Stalin in the former Soviet Union, you know, right, left, east, west, north, south, Taliban, the rightist fundamentalist alliance, for them, a top priority is always keeping women down. That is not coincidental, but because our conventional categories don't even mention women or children or family, right? So that's why I'm inviting you, go to Center for Partnership, read some of the books that I've written. I mean, this is so important because we need new thinking that no longer marginalizes or excludes the majority of humanity, women and children. And then we can talk about in-group versus out-group thinking and why it's not coincidental that whether it's Shia against Sunni or Sunni against Shia in parts of the Middle East, or whether it's racism in the US or anti-Semitism in where I was born in Austria, it's the begins really with equating difference, beginning with the difference in form between the male and female form, with either dominating or being dominated, with either being superior or inferior, with either being served or serving. Kids then, apply that to every difference, racial, ethnic, sexual orientation. So anyway, I'm going to leave because I'm getting very involved in all of this. So you are such a vital part of the movement towards a partnership society, the partnerism movement, which, I've said when I've spoken very often, my title has been "What's good for women is good for the world. What's bad for women is bad for the world." And it's up to us to really support caring men like your husband, Claire, and help all men to leave behind that straitjacket of domination, masculinity, and help women, as you said, become more assertive and have our voices be heard. So thank you. And I'm really leaving. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I wonder if Karimba wants just to say, and
Yes.
I really love the Ubuntu, and I think this is what this whole call is about.
Yes, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let me just say something before my laptop goes off, but I'm so grateful that the universe held the space for me to be able to sit here through the call. We don't have power today, but that's okay. I talk about this thing that there's a life, or there's this thing that we think we are living. There's this life that I'm living. But really, every moment I ask myself, what is the life that is calling to be lived through me? There are circumstances that happen in our lives, and we are thinking, this thing is horrific. I love what Claire said, because it is I call it stopping and being still and being with whatever the emotion is, if we are calling it pain at that moment, and just holding it and taking responsibility in that reclaimed thing is about holding, owning, embodying. So you can imagine, I'm telling this to a woman living with HIV and AIDS who thinks they're going to die tomorrow or yesterday, even though they're living today. And I'm saying, until we look this in the eye, we understand it, we know how it works in our bodies, we will not be able to overcome it. And I learned this from, ouch. I'm gone.
No, you're not. You're here.
Oh, I'm not.
We still hear you. Keep going.
Don't stop.
Okay, my screen went blank. So, but then we go on. So I had a terrible experience that I don't have the time to explain now, but it had something to do with losing my son and him being taken away from me. And for years.
Oh.
Oh no.
Oh, we lost her.
Well, perhaps that's the sign that it is time actually to end our call, which is the hardest thing to do. But as we move forward together to change the world. We will be receiving, you will be sending out a copy of this recording along with everything mentioned on this call in terms of everyone's contact information and how to register for our next call. And also everything can be found on our website at sarahforhope.org. Please help us.
Can you ask?
Sorry?
Can you ask Karamba to just share that story so that you can send it out so that she doesn't feel like she just started something and
what a
and
great
couldn't read it.
And we want to hear it. We want to hear it and embody it. So
Well, great point, Clara. And not only that, maybe I can record her and send that out.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be great.
Okay,
And
good.
they're asking if you can save the chat as well. All the information.
Yeah, there's so many, and our speakers, you all should see the chats if you haven't been looking at them. They're all just incredible wisdom in themselves, but also greatly complimenting you and your work and how much you've moved everybody here. So I'll be sending that out as well to everybody and to our speakers. And so we decided we would like to say goodbye with a mantra that we have adopted for this initiative, for the General Congress of Women. And we're going to invite you to, if you can see what's floating over Laura's head, Women Uniting to Change the World. And we invite you to join us chanting that 3 times, wherever you are. Chant it on the top of your lungs, if you will. And we will too right now. Shall we? Ready?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Women
Uniting to change the world.
Women
Uniting to change the world.
Women
uniting to change
the world.
Yay.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone.
Oh, bless you all. Thank you so much, Jean.
Powerful.
Ho, ho, ho.